And so this morning we're going to break down those two versions of the Bible in a way that will help you understand what's going on not only in your life, not only in the life of Jesus at that time, not only in the life of the disciples as they were journeying towards a divine end, but to understand that one word, why. Why did he? Why would he? Why could he? Why everything? This morning I'm going to just share some stories with you because I think through these stories you might understand even more clear than the NIV version or the Message version, because sometimes real life brings to us an understanding more clearly portrayed than anything that we can read or understand. I'm going to tell you about 7 people whose lives explain this gospel passage, and hopefully by the end of this morning's message you can answer for yourself as well as for others who ask what is behind that question of why. Now, the first person that I'd like to share with you about is Isaiah. Isaiah was a prophet, probably the most prolific, the most respected prophet of all times. Everything that you've heard said comes as a prophecy from the prophet Isaiah. And remember that Isaiah spoke, wrote, and taught more than 500 years before the birth of Jesus of Nazareth. And the primary difference between his speaking, his prophecy, and giving a picture of what's happening is the foundation of prediction versus prophecy. Because you see, to predict means that you have calculated your answer, you've decided on what you think is going to happen, and you tell the story to other people. Prophecy is different in just one way. Your calculation is the foundation of divine foreseeing. So God foretold what was going to happen through the prophets. And so in that, we start to understand not only the life of the people before, but the life of Christ, who is the example for us to follow. And through those prophets of old, Jesus then lives out the vision of God without fail, without a single error, describing the how and the what and the why of everything of all times. But there is a catch. There's a catch to all things in life, but especially when you understand prophecy. The catch is that there is a cost to understanding and then following. What if God was a God of all sporting events and teams that were offered in our world? Well, God is, but what if there was a God that was totally responsible for just sporting events? And that God offered to you that everything that you would like to happen for your team would come about. Sound pretty good?
Sure.
What's your favorite team?
Cowboys.
The Cowboys, and you'd like to see them win the Super Bowl.
Sure.
What's your favorite team?
Cardinals.
Cardinals.
Faithful.
And you'd like to see them win the pennant.
Absolutely.
Tigers.
The Tigers.
Harlem Globetrotters.
The Globetrotters. The Globetrotters. That's rigged. They're going to win anyway.
They're funny when you're stressed out.
See if you're paying attention.
I was paying attention.
You were.
Your favorite teams. What if the God of sporting events would say to you, I can make your team win? Pretty good deal, wouldn't it? But if you decide to accept that, there is a cost that is associated with everything. What if the God of sporting said, okay, I'll make that happen. What are you willing to say or do in response to my allowing your team to win? Who was first over here?
To God be the glory.
To God be the glory. Any other thoughts of what you might say or do?
Somebody has to lose.
Somebody has to lose. And it might as well be the opponents of your team, right?
Let's flip a coin.
Make sure the ball's not flat.
What would you be willing to give for that? Well, I came prepared in case your thoughts were a little rambling. Doug said that if his team, the Boston Red Sox, it is Boston, right?
Yes. Yes.
The Boston Red Sox, that he would use the same dental floss for 3 weeks after their win. Suzanne said of her team that she would take all of their dirty socks after every game and wash them and dry them and return them clean for the rest of her life. Arthur, not Art, Arthur said that he would gladly trade his mother-in-law.
I could do that.
Testing 1, 2, testing. We are recording. Stephen said that he would tell his wife where he hid the credit card. Chris said that he would do anything, even trade his soul. So you better think before you speak. You better think before you act. Before you say to anyone, I will follow, if you make things happen the way I would like to see them happen. We must think deeply before we commit, because with every decision there is a cost of discipleship, a cost of following, a cost of responding. So we've tackled Isaiah, and the next I'd like to tackle is kind of 2 in 1. You ever hear of a restaurateur called Mario Batali? Well, he owns one of the famous restaurants that he owns, and he owns quite a few of them. It's called the Spotted Pig. Mario hired a head chef at one of his restaurants without even asking her to cook. Her name was April, and April Bloomfield received the job of head chef in Mario's respected Spotted Pig restaurant, because when she came to talk to Mario and reached out to shake his hand, her arms were crisscrossed with scars of reaching into the oven. Mario knew that she was the chef that he wanted, because she would suffer personal pain to make sure that her job was complete and the people were pleased. The next, number 4, is George Atlee. George, in 1989, was called into the mission field, and he was sent to the mission field to Central Africa. In 1989, when George went into the wilds of Africa, one of the things that he carried with him along with his Bible was a Winchester rifle with 10 rounds of bullets in the chamber, so that he would be able to be protected. Along the way, as he was walking towards the location of the tribe that he was to minister to, he was apprehended by the group of the tribesmen who meant to do him harm because they didn't know him. He just knew of them, and he had 2 choices. He could preach or shoot. He could open fire on them and start with the people in the village, or he could just let it take its course. They found George's body in the river just down from the village. They found his rifle on the shore without a single shot being fired. But George made his choice, and he chose to risk it all. And that's commitments, my sisters and brothers. That's faithfulness to your calling. Vernon Dahmer, in 1966, received mail in his mailbox that was a voter's registration card. That's no big deal, right? We get those all the time. They come in the mail to all of us. But the difference is that Vernon was a black man in Mississippi and had been very active in the civil rights movement, trying to eliminate discrimination, starting with the ability to vote. In his community, there were many things, many taxes, keeping the ethnic people from casting their vote. The only problem with the celebration when Vernon found the mailbox was that Vernon didn't find it. His family did. You see, Vernon died 3 weeks before his voter's registration came from burned lungs that he received when he was defending his family when the white knights of the Ku Klux Klan came and burned down his house as he was standing on the porch with his shotgun. They escaped, and that was his prayer. The sixth was the Apostle Peter. The Apostle Peter is the one that we heard about. He just didn't want to hear the bad news. He loved Jesus. He was the one who knew for certain that Jesus was the Son of God, the true Son of God, the Messiah come to their time and to their community. He just didn't want to hear the bad news. It's a little bit like when the doctor says to his patient, the bad news is you have cancer and that you only have 3 weeks to live. And the patient then goes home to his family, and what does the patient do? He tells his family, and they are upset. Get another doctor. Get a second opinion. And that's the same thing that Peter was trying to say to Jesus. I love you. You don't have to do those things. And after Peter rebuked Jesus, Jesus rebuked Peter. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was a German priest who paved the way with his 20th century theology, and he wrote so many things, even from prison, where he spent the last of his life. He wrote articulately and very detailed answers to Peter's quest. You see, one of the writings of Dietrich Bonhoeffer was The Cost of Discipleship. Jesus would never allow God's children to hear God's call and do anything that he was not willing to do on his own. And so the cost of discipleship for Jesus, as we know in this Lenten season, comes upon us as a week of passion that ends on Easter Sunday with the resurrection. Jesus' ministry where all this took place. A town called Caesarea Philippi. And it was renamed from Caesarea because the ruler of that community, his name was Philip. His brother Herod Antipas was the ruler of Caesarea, which was the town right there on the coast. And he wanted it to be different. But both of those cities, Roman as they could be, were flourishing with pagan worship. And no different in Caesarea Philippi, where Jesus' ministry was to be strong. And what better place for Jesus then to start that ministry strong than in a place where pagan worship was the strongest. Peter called Jesus the true Son of God, the Messiah, the Son of Man. Sometimes we question in our hearts the things we understand and the things we don't understand. And one of those titles that we question is the Son of Man. Now that comes from a link that brings us to understand that Jesus as the Christ is prophesied by Daniel to come with heavenly divine authority. Son of Man is the title that reveals the divine authority that Jesus arrives with. All of this comes together as the disciples come together at that time when Jesus is teaching them of what must happen. They must understand the coming accomplishments that occur after his resurrection, which is after his death, which is after the week of Passion. Because you see, the training and the learning to that point had left them with only a partial understanding of who Jesus was and what was to come for them. And it's important for us as disciples to understand the cost for our discipleship.
Amen.
And the statement that Jesus makes to them, and he makes to us as well, is far greater things than I have done, you shall accomplish. These become the what, the why, and the how. Those greater things that we as followers of Christ are yet to accomplish. Jesus suffered shame on his way to the cross, pain on the cross, and a sense of abandonment at that same moment, leaving this moral gulf between where Jesus was and taught and to where we, the people of the universe, stand. And Jesus embraced us by crossing over that gulf and bringing to us a freedom and a purity of life. Those who truly believe are of the ones that Christ came to save. And we, as believers, are then to take that message on out to the world of God incarnate, God with us, God for us, God like us in so many ways. And those things are the why. The why Jesus died, the why Jesus rose, and the why Jesus ascended, and the why we come together as disciples to follow in his footsteps. We live as the men and women of our time with a cost of discipleship, willing to suffer beyond where we were before so that we can celebrate with the King. Discipleship is serious business, and it may be compelling. But isn't it easier to claim the title for our life than to live that way? It's so much easier to say, I am a Christian. It's even easier than that to say, I go to church regularly. Is that once a year, twice a year, once a month, every week?
Every 6 months.
The question, as you understand that is to understand the cost of discipleship. What does it mean when I say I'm in? And as we start to reveal the cost, the question is now, are you still in? Because you see, Jesus said to his faith community of his time, even greater things than you will accomplish. And if you're in, are you ready to get started? And all the children say,
Amen.